settled, and I hope you're feeling better. And we're ready to resume.
Judge, the few other things that I have to follow up on.
You're going to reserve for later.
Yeah, I can do that.
Very good. All right. Let's move to our next juror.
Hi, Juror 17.
Yes.
Do some follow-up with you real quick. I understand that you are an educator.
Yes, sir.
Kindergarten.
Yes, sir.
Okay. How long have you been doing that?
I've been teaching for 23 years.
Oh, great. Always kindergarten?
No, sir, I did second grade for 20 years, and then I got demoted because I couldn't do the higher math and I couldn't do kindergarten.
I couldn't do the higher math either.
Math is crazy.
I have the hardest time with my oldest daughter's math homework, and everybody knows. All right, so obviously, being an educator that long, you've got a passion for working with kids.
Yes.
Okay. And then I have down here that your husband is retired. He was a water inspector. Is that
Yes.
okay? And how long did he do that prior to retirement?
He worked with the water department probably about 17 years, and then he had a catastrophic wreck at work.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
So he kind of had it.
Okay, all right. Is he disabled at present?
He's on disability.
Okay, all right. All right, you were asked about any legal training, knowing anyone that works in the legal field.
Yes,
I believe you indicated that applied to you, correct?
Yes, sir. My dad was an attorney. My sister's an attorney. My uncle's an attorney. And two of my brother-in-laws were attorneys.
Okay. You got a long
Yes.
history with attorneys in your family, it sounds like. Now, I want to ask you, did any of them at any time practice any criminal law?
No, sir.
Okay. What type of law? Obviously, the law covers all kinds of areas. You got tax, you got bankruptcy, you got criminal law, you've got civil stuff.
My dad was a small town lawyer. I grew up in a small town, and he would do like wills and little things like that.
How about your sister?
My sister is an attorney for SunTrust Bank.
Okay. So kind of corporate.
Yes, and my uncle. And then one of my brother-in-laws, he's in a big firm in Atlanta. He's my sister's ex-husband. And then my other brother-in-law did environmental law.
Okay.
And he was with a firm in Atlanta.
The reason we always like to ask that, sometimes people have criminal lawyers in their family, either a prosecutor or defense attorney, and they talk about their cases or something like that, and we just didn't, that doesn't sound like it's going to be an issue for you because none of them have been involved in criminal law. Okay. And tell me about your medical training or knowing somebody that works in the medical field.
Well, I kind of feel like I had medical training with my husband's catastrophic wreck. It happened in 2002, and so he was in intensive care for over a month.
Oh, geez.
Then he was in rehab for a couple of months. And then when he got to come back home, I started physical therapy with him the day after he came. And then with surgeries, I can't even tell you how many, so I've been in hospital a lot.
I see. Okay. Yeah, you kind of have to learn when you have that personal experience
Yes.
that you kind of, it's almost like on-the-job training. You're learning things through medical professionals such that you can help your loved ones. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And for your husband's situation, this is work-related? Did I gather that from your prior
Yes, sir,
answer?
it's working.
Okay. All right. If you were, I assume, I mean, obviously you've been here for a couple days now. When you're not at home and when you're working, you'll go to kindergarten and stuff like that. He's able to care for himself and things like that, though.
Yes, sir. He goes to physical therapy twice a week. Transport takes him to Savannah.
I see.
Therapy, and I just make sure the coffee's made for him, and if he needs anything out of the pantry, I get it out for him, things like that.
Okay. There was a series of questions about DFAC's involvement and any allegations of child abuse or neglect. I assume, and you please correct me if I'm wrong, sometimes you shouldn't make assumptions, but I assume a lot of that's probably work-related.
It's all over.
Okay. And have you had instances as a mandatory reporter, is what we call it? I'm assuming you're familiar with the term. Have you had instances as a mandatory reporter where you had to report things?
Yes, sir. And we at school, we have to report it to our principal, our counselor, and then they call the social worker, and then I get into the defects. So I never talk to the defects. And the parents are never supposed to know it's me.
I see. So it's all admin dealing with that. You take it to your next level, and then they, of course, will report it. But you've never been interviewed by them or police or anything like that. Tell me about the licensing that you hold. Obviously, you're a certified teacher. Is there anything else that prompted a response to that? And you have prior jury service, correct? Was it a jury or grand jury?
It was jury.
And one time or multiple times?
No, sir, this is the 4th time I've been called for jury duty. I've served 2 times, and then one time the lawyers talked it out in the hallway, and we all got dismissed.
Okay. All right, let's talk about the 2 times. And were they both here locally, or they?
Yes.
Okay. And were they both criminal, or were they civil, or combination?
One of them was an employee suing their employer, and then the other one, I don't really remember. That one was kind of a fog. It was my first time, and I think I was just kind of in shock. I was on jury duty. It was a policeman had pulled somebody over for driving too fast, and then he had done his job all the way, so it didn't.
Okay. So let's take them. So the last one you were talking about is actually the oldest jury service that you had, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, and it was something as a result of a traffic stop.
I believe it was.
Was it like a misdemeanor in state court, like just the traffic offenses, or was there some other charge
There was
related?
something else with it. I don't remember. Like I said, I think I was in shock.
How long ago was that?
That was probably about 7 years ago. It's the first time I'd ever been called for jury duty, and I was just I didn't know what I was doing.
Sure.
To be honest.
Did you, don't tell me what the verdict was, but did you reach a verdict in the
Yes, sir,
case?
we did.
And were you by chance the foreperson of that jury?
Yes, sir.
Similarly, for I guess it would be the more recent one, the lawsuit, the civil case. Did you reach a verdict in that?
Yes, sir.
And were you the foreperson of that jury? How did you enjoy the experience? And obviously, you could have a different answer for either of them, so you tell me.
Yeah, the first one was interesting, and the second one was interesting. And then
Anything?
not my usual realm of law.
Anything about either of those 2 instances where you served as a juror that would impact your ability to be fair in this case?
No.
You attend a church regularly, is that correct? Which church?
St. Simon's Presbyterian.
And there was a question, very broad question, fraternal organizations, clubs that you're involved in. What were you thinking of when you raised your hand there?
I was thinking about Page, Professional Association of Georgia Educators.
Okay.
And I didn't know if that was what I wanted.
Absolutely. In terms of the social media and messaging and things like that, if my notes are accurate, and sometimes they are, sometimes they're not, but if my notes are accurate, I have that you do message people,
Yes, sir.
but I didn't have you down for any of those specific apps like Kick and Whisper and all those kind of...
Never heard of those.
Okay. What type of messaging do you use? Is that Facebook, text messaging?
Texting, some on Facebook. Yes.
All right. There was a question very close in time to that one about posting an opinion online. And I believe you raised your hand that you, at some point in your past, have posted an opinion online?
I'll comment it back to people.
Okay.
That's
So like on Facebook or something like that, somebody puts a comment, you might say something back to them.
Yes.
Not like you go to Fox News or something and do a political opinion or anything like that. Okay. There was a very, very broad series of questions that dealt with legal issues and whether you have any legal interests, fiction versus nonfiction. I believe you raised your hand for one of those questions.
Yeah, I used to watch Law and Order.
Okay.
They started adding all those new shows, and I got confused, so I stopped watching.
It's a lot, they got the SVU and all the, yeah. Okay. Any other shows other than Law and Order?
No.
Question about caretaker. I know we've covered at least 2 topics. I would certainly qualify you as being a caretaker of the kids as a kindergarten teacher. Sounds like you're also a caretaker to some degree for your husband because of his situation. Is there anything else that you were thinking of for that, or those 2 instances that we've already discussed?
Yes, sir, that would be it.
There's a positive experience with law enforcement that you raised your hand for. Will you please tell me about that?
Well, when I was up in Savannah, I drive back and forth every day when my husband was there.
Mhm.
And just the the police there were so nice, security guards, they'd always walk me out, because I'd leave like at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning and
Oh, wow.
drive, and they would make sure that I got safely to my car.
Mhm.
You know.
So you mentioned Savannah a couple times. I'm curious, did the accident happen in Savannah,
No,
or
sir, he was carried to Savannah.
I see. Is that just where they have the, I guess, the best medical?
Yes, sir, because it was catastrophic.
We have a local hospital in Cobb County. It's called Kennestone, and it's a very good hospital. But a lot of times for our more catastrophic injuries, they take them to Grady, which is in downtown. So I understand that depending on where you are, the level of care may be a little bit different. So that's what it sounds like prompted them to transport your husband to Savannah. You've testified before in court?
Yes, sir, a child custody case, one of my students.
Okay. I'm curious why you were called by one of the litigants in that, or do you know?
I'm not really sure. I think because the one parent was the one that we always saw at school, that always brought the child in. We never saw the other parent.
Oh, I see.
And so I think.
There was an issue about absentee parenting or something like
Yes.
that. I understand. Not any abuse or neglect allegation.
No, sir.
We may have fully covered this topic. You raised your hand for one of our questions. Have you ever made an allegation of abuse or neglect? Is that, again, referring to the prior DFACS question you raised your hand for? And then you indicated you don't transport children, haven't transported children or anything like that. That's not obviously part of your job responsibility. And then tell me, one of the defense questions was, have you ever experienced a tragic event? And I think you raised your hand for that. What were you thinking of when you raised your hand for that question?
The day that my husband had the accident.
That was certainly qualified. All right. There's at least a couple of areas that I know we're going to have to delve into individually. But I think that's all I have for you at this point. Thank you.
Hey, good morning.
No.
All right, to follow up on a couple of things that Mr. Evans was asking you about in particular, you've been in education 23 years, part of that second grade, part of that kindergarten, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so during that time, you've obviously dealt with primarily younger children.
Yes.
You've actually been called to testify in a child custody case
Yes.
regarding one of your students. And Mr. Evans used the term absentee parenting. Is that accurate as to why you were called? Because you observed one parent that did all the parenting and the other that...
I'm not really sure why I was called.
Mhm.
I'm just assuming we just saw the one parent all the time, always bringing the child in, coming to conferences, and we never saw the other parent. So I'm guessing that's why I was called.
Okay. And doing what you do, you have to have some level of interaction with parents, conferences, PTA meetings, school events, drop off, pick up, unless they ride the bus, I guess. Do y'all have buses?
Yes, sir, we do.
Okay. So you for more than 2 decades, you've been in a position to observe parenting. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, sir.
Do you believe you've been in a position to be able to make a determination whether a parent is in fact an engaged and involved parent and one that is an absentee parent?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In fact, you have had to make reports to DFACS as well,
Yes.
involving I guess what you consider to be either neglect or abuse.
Yes.
What kind of things have you seen that bothered you so much that you needed to report that to your principal?
Sometimes you have children come in and they're covered with bruises. I had a child one time who didn't sit down because she didn't know. Sometimes children will tell us things that go on at home, and I'm required by law to report that if they tell me to.
So is it primarily physical abuse that you would be reporting?
Yes, I was listening.
Okay. So you've been in a position to observe not only physical manifestations of parenting, such as abuse that we're talking about,
Yes,
neglect, but also the, I guess, the broader topic of just parenting in general.
Yes.
Those who show up and those who don't.
yes.
Have you ever been asked to come in and sit down and have a conference with a DFACS officer in an open case?
No, I have not. We fill out a form, and then we give it to our counsel or to our principal, and they take it from there. I never know what happens once I have to turn something in. I don't know what's happening.
Okay. I think that may be all that I need to ask you right now. No, you did answer yes. I asked if you had any family or close friends or coworkers who you learned had an affair.
Yes.
Is that something you could tell us about?
Yeah, it was my sister and her husband. They were divorced now.
Okay. Was it one or both of them?
It was,
Both of them?
yes, sir.
Okay. All right. And are you still friendly with your sister?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is this something that was recent?
It was probably 12 years ago.
Okay. Did you know what was going on?
I did not, no, sir.
Okay.
She's up in Atlanta, she's in Buckhead, so
Okay.
that's a long ways from here.
And did you just kind of learn about it when it was determined they were going to separate or divorce?
Yes, I learned about it.
That's when you learned about it?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. We've got a couple of things to follow up with you, but that's all I have for right now. Thank you.
Good morning. You are our juror number 18, so I'll just kind of refer to you as juror 18. And want to talk a little bit about your background first of all. You said internet sales. Can you tell me a little bit about
Mainly eBay.
buying and selling on that? And is that your full-time employment?
It is currently, yes.
Okay. All right. And then how long you been doing that?
Probably since eBay started.
Okay.
On and off.
You're one of the front runners for being on
Yeah.
eBay. Okay. What about you? Tell me a little bit more about your employment background prior to eBay. What did you do?
I've done a lot of stuff. We ran a retail store, it was a comic book, gaming, video game store here at the mall locally. I also did that in California. I helped my father run a large retail building in California. he had several retail stores that I helped manage.
Okay.
on and off.
So you've got a history then with management and retail.
Some, yes.
And how long were you in California and what brought you to Glen?
I was in California until end of 2000, my entire life, except
Mhm.
the first year. We came here, my dad was very ill with cancer, and he was looking to slow down as far as the pace.
I see.
And that's pretty much what brought us here. My godfather happened to drive from New York to Miami to see his mother,
I see.
and happened to stop here sometime and liked it, bought a house here, raved about it, so we moved here just on a whim. We were kind of, when you have that much trauma going on, I had several family members die at once, and then my dad was sick, and it was a trying time.
Sure.
So it just kind of made it, we just wanted to get out of there. It was too expensive. It was so inexpensive here, we thought, well, let's just go.
Well, you certainly picked a nice place to come. The Georgia coast is very beautiful and can be a relaxing place. So I'm sure that your father appreciated that. You liked it enough, obviously, that you since stayed here and started up your business through eBay. Is that correct?
But yeah, I could do it from anywhere. It's partially.
Sure. Okay. And then I have your wife. She works at a local restaurant.
Yes.
And how long has she done that?
Fox Pizza, about 6 months.
Okay. And series of questions you were asked. One of the questions was, do you know anyone who's a defense attorney or works for in criminal defense? Did you raise your hand for that question?
I don't think for criminal defense, I don't know, except for my attorney, but I don't know if he does criminal. I'm sure he does criminal
Okay.
defense.
What do you have an attorney for? Is that business related?
It was
Or?
business related, yes.
You've already talked a little bit about having prior management and firing experience. Was that all in retail management?
Yes.
Who do you know in law enforcement?
I do some local acting, and one of the gentlemen that I act with is a FLETC instructor.
Okay.
He was 20 years in Philadelphia PD, and then he teaches at FLETC on and off now. He's retired, so he just does it part-time now, but he did it full-time for, I think he said 15 years, 12 years, something like that.
How long you been acting?
About 2.5, 3 years now.
Great. Is this local programming or national?
Local, Atlanta, some films. My mom's here, so we moved back here. So my mom's going to go live with her friend in Wisconsin probably next year. We'll move back to Atlanta, move to Atlanta.
Okay. Who do you know that's got military background?
My grandfather, father, uncle, a recent younger friend that I was sort of mentoring, I guess. He wanted to learn how to play basketball. I played a lot of basketball. I was teaching him some stuff. He just got on basic. So that's probably the most recent stuff. So,
We'll start with the young friend first. What branch? Army? Okay. And what about your grandfather, father, uncle? What branch?
my father was Army, World War II. My father was National Guard, and my uncle was Navy.
You almost had them all covered.
Yeah.
Who do you know that's got a psychiatric or psychological background?
Just my wife's friend. It's a recent, I don't know how that must have met.
Mm-hmm.
She's a psychologist, PhD, and I think my wife talks to everyone, so I think she just struck a conversation with her, and they've been just chatting and talking. So.
Okay. So it's more a social context. You know somebody that happens to work in that field.
Right.
IT background.
My friend who fixes my computers, I gave him the business. He's really good at it. I was fixed, and he's my friend, so I just figured I'd use him.
Okay. I'm having a hard time reading my notes here, but do you have prior jury service?
Yes.
Yeah. Was that local or elsewhere?
That was in California.
How long ago was that?
Just probably about 17, 18 years ago.
Criminal or civil?
It was criminal.
You remember the nature of the offense?
Yeah, it was something involving with breaking into a car theft, stereo, something along those lines.
All right. Don't tell me what the verdict was, but did you reach a verdict on the case?
They solved it in the hallway. As soon as we went to lunch, we came back and they solved it.
So you didn't even get a chance to deliberate. That
Nothing.
the whole thing resolved itself in one way, shape, or form. There's a bunch of questions that involve social media and all the different types of things, and obviously you work with computers, so you probably are more up to speed than some of those in the courtroom. I have that you don't have Instagram, but you do some things on Craigslist. Is that correct?
Sometimes I'll buy stuff and resell it on eBay. Buy it on Craigslist, resell it on eBay.
Okay. What types of things are you selling on eBay?
Mainly collectibles, gaming, CCGs, collectible card games, and comic books along those lines, video games.
How are you familiar with Kick?
My wife's friend moved to Denver, Colorado, and she's been single forever. And she uses that. She uses that and the Tinder. So that's. I'm not personally. I don't have an account with either of those.
You just know what it is.
I know of it.
There was a question. Have you communicated with strangers on using social media or the internet? And you've raised your hand for that. I gather a lot of that has to do with eBay and selling stuff online, correct? Any other context other than that?
Probably Facebook. I mean, just posting comments occasionally. I don't do it that much. I'll go in spurts. I actually had chicken pox, if you can believe that. Chicken pox about 4 or 5 months ago. So I was on the couch really for 2 weeks. I was bored, and I did more of that than I usually would.
I got you. Just kind of killing the time because you can't go out anywhere, huh? And I think that answers my next question, posting an opinion online.
Sure.
Are we talking about like political opinions or things like that, or more opinions on...
I try to stay away from political stuff. Yeah, just like commenting on this.
Makes sense. You have some legal interests, is that correct? TV shows or movies?
Just one, The Good Wife.
Okay.
I knew a couple of people that had a recurring role for a while, so just very small parts. And we saw them. I was like, oh, I know that person. So it's a husband and wife. I met them on Starship Farragut. It's a Star Trek fan film, one of the biggest ones on the internet. And I met them on the set in Kingston.
Oh, cool. So you're actually able to turn on the show and say, hey, there's somebody I know on TV. That's kind of neat.
It happened to be a good show. We watched all 7 seasons.
Great. Tell me about being a caretaker for others. I know about your father's situation.
My father and my grandmother for a while.
And I don't mean to get too personal about this, but for your father's situation, is he still with us, or okay? I'm sorry to hear that. But you're not currently caretaking for anyone. Let's see. Volunteering with kids. That was one of your responses. Will you tell me about that?
Yeah, just it was I think it was a YMCA rec league. This was 20 years ago. I refereed for basketball games. Because that background, I play a lot of basketball.
By chance, the friend that just got out of basic, the young man that you mentored, I assume is a young man or a young female?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you meet him through the YMCA?
Yeah, I met him at the Y locally here, playing basketball.
Okay. You talked about, we had several questions about having negative or positive experiences with law enforcement, and I have you down for both. Is that fair?
It is.
Can you tell me first about the negative experience, and then we'll get to the positive experience?
It's probably 25, on my way to play a basketball game out of town to Intramural with a friend. We come to a stop sign. I stop because this one, you have to stop. Everyone knows this one's it's a dangerous area. It's an off-ramp off the highway, and I was going to get gas. And there's no way to run that stop sign, because if you do, you're going to get creamed. Everybody knows. So across the street there, we pulled in the gas station, and the cop behind me didn't pull me over. I was already in. He pulled up behind me, and he was yelling and screaming before as soon as I rolled down my window.
Okay.
And I thought he was going to hit me. He got this close to my face, and I was just said, "Yes, sir, no, sir, yes, officer." When we went to court, he didn't show up, and they threw it out.
Okay.
That's what ended up happening.
Did you get a ticket or something, obviously?
Did get a ticket, yes.
And was that for running the stop sign?
For roll and stop, I guess. California stop in California.
So while we're on that topic, it sounds like one of the defense questions was, have you ever contested a ticket? Is that the instance you were referring of?
Yes.
And the net result of that is dismissal.
Yes.
That was in California.
Yes.
Is there anything about that situation, I know it's been a couple of decades ago, anything about that situation that might impact your ability to be fair?
Everybody has a bad day.
Okay. And what about your positive experience with law enforcement?
Georgia's been really good. When we literally got off the plane, I was here with my ex-fiancée.
Mm-hmm.
We were lost, turned around in Brunswick. We were here. We came to visit before we moved here just for a week, and we turned into a gas station, and he pulled in behind us, and I thought, oh, you know. And he got out. And he came up to the car. I said, yes. And he said, you guys obviously aren't from here. What are you looking for? And I thought, how this is going. And he said, follow. He said, sure, I know where this. Follow me. He drove us 3-4 miles. We followed him down to us right to where we were going.
Okay.
I thought, wow, okay. And just law enforcement has been very fair and nice since I've been out there.
Okay, very good.
Comparatively to California.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
What about, you know somebody that's been arrested before? Question, do you know anyone that's ever been, it was very broad actually, have you ever been charged with,
I'm sure I have, I just can't think of them off the top of my head. Yeah, I don't remember my head, I'm sorry.
Okay. One of the other questions too was, have you ever gone to court and testified before?
Does it count if I testified for myself or for my wife? It was for civil matters. She had a piece of property, we sold it on contract, and I had to testify about the contract to the judge.
Was that here locally?
It was Camden County.
I see. No criminal cases, so just that civil context. You talked about having to give a statement to law enforcement in the past. Will you tell me about that?
We had another rental property, and I heard a domestic dispute, and it sounded like he was hitting her. I called the police, and he was already gone. I got a statement from the officer.
Were you satisfied with law enforcement's response when you called them?
Yes, they were there. They were there quickly.
Okay. Knowing somebody that's dated online,
That's my friend's, my wife's friend.
the one in California, or excuse me, Colorado? And then there was a question about, do you know anyone who's ever left a child or an animal behind in a vehicle, or have you ever experienced that situation? Did you raise your hand for that question?
I did.
Can you,
When I was a child myself, I was probably 10 or 11 years old. We had a two-story house, and I looked out of my TV room, and it has a big bay window,
mm-hmm.
and I happen to look down and I see a child, maybe two, in diapers and just a shirt, wandering around on the street. And I almost walked into the street. I ran down there and grabbed him, because I didn't want him to wander out and get hit by a car. And I called the police. I don't really remember what happened, but I know he had wandered, stuck in my head, I think, 15 blocks.
Okay.
And that was my experience with it. So.
All right, so this was I see. So you raised your hand because, and correctly so, you weren't sure what applied to you. More like an abandonment of a child situation rather than left a child in a car. Or,
Right.
okay, because this child, to be clear, was not in a car. It was just somebody was not watching the child, or the child got away or wandered off. Okay. No other situation you were thinking about when you raised your hand. Tested ticket. I certainly don't mean to get personal when I ask you about these questions, and you have a right, as the judge told you, to say, hey, let's do this individually. In fact, I know there's a couple things we're going to have to delve into individually with you anyway. But there are a couple questions about pornography and sex addiction, and knowing anyone that maybe has been involved in any of those kind of addiction type situations. Did you raise your hand for those questions? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Just a friend that struggled with it for years, on and off. He lived in a facility to try to deal with it. And I don't have a lot of contact with him anymore, but he was a very close friend for a long time.
Is it a friend from California or local?
It was in California, and he actually moved here.
He actually sought treatment for that?
He did.
All right. And how close would you say you were to this individual?
We played high school basketball together, and he still lives here.
All right. There was a question the defense asked you about experiencing any tragic events in your life. Obviously, your father's situation would qualify as one. Is there anything else that you were thinking of above that?
Several years ago, excuse me.
That's right.
Several years ago, my friend on New Year's Day, hanged himself,
Mhm.
and it was very sudden, and it really bothered me for a while.
I'm sorry to hear that. Does this person did he live locally or?
He did.
Okay. Again, several topics we'll have to cover individually, but I think that's all I have for right now. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Hey, good morning. So while we've been here for a couple of days, we have gone to, or we ordered from Jonesy's Pizza, and it's pretty good.
Not familiar.
Okay, and your wife works at Fox Pizza,
Fox's downtown, there's two, there's one on downtown.
downtown Brunswick, and that's the one she's at. Okay. So Mr. Lumpkin has indicated all of the pizza places that we're going to try, so I think that's on our list. We'll let you know. There are several topics we're going to talk to you about privately, but I want to just touch base on just a couple of things. And the first thing is the last thing you told us about a friend who had committed suicide on New Year's Day. Obviously, that's quite a traumatic experience. But what I want to know is, were you the person that found him?
No, his son found him.
Okay. Is this a friend you were close with? Okay. Did this come as a surprise to you?
Yes, and no, it's very complicated. He was depressed for a very long time, but he never indicated that he was going to do that.
You knew he was having some problems, you just didn't know to what extent.
Yes.
Okay. All right. The friend who you indicated that had some sort of pornography or sex addiction, you said had sought some sort of counseling for that. This was a person who you were or are close to?
Not so much anymore. No, I'm still friends with him, but we don't have a lot of contact.
Okay.
I see him around occasionally. We may talk, but not like it was before. Where I see him, several times a week, and we plan and spend time together.
All right. So if you see him around, that means this is someone who's in this area.
He is.
Okay. We all sort of have seasons in life where friends kind of come and go, and sometimes we reconnect later. Was whatever his addictions were, was that the reason why you're no longer close with him?
We've grown apart, but that was part of it. He still struggles with it. It makes him very reclusive. It can make him very reclusive because he has a lot of shame. Well, I assume he has a lot of shame. He's expressed shame, and he'll also just disappear. We won't answer his phone, won't communicate because he's caught up in it. So,
Okay. And has he sat down and talked to you sort of about the specifics?
some specifics, yes.
Okay. Is this what are we talking about? Are we talking about using prostitutes or stuff on the internet or just?
A lot of it's internet related.
Okay.
He does meet people.
Okay.
I don't really know how it works, honestly. I
All
don't
right.
really want the very details.
Hookups or whatever?
So, yes.
Okay. And is he married?
He's not.
Okay. You mentioned real briefly calling the police on somebody, and if I heard you correctly, you've got rental property, and you heard.
I don't anymore, sir. I let the house go, switched professions. The house needed a lot of work, so we just kind of let it go. It was I had split part of my house, and I had a small apartment that I rented, and there was a domestic disturbance going on. I heard sounded to me like he was hitting her and she was screaming. So I called the police.
Okay. You gave a statement after that, whatever they did, they did?
Yes.
You never got called to come back in
I
or
never heard anything again.
go to court or anything like that? All right. You've told us that you are self-employed, and again, if I heard correctly, it's you have an internet-based business?
Mainly just eBay.
Okay. Buying and selling.
Yes, sir.
Is there any sort of product or products or industry that you concentrate your sales on?
More of a collectible, comic book, video games.
Okay. Collectibles, comic books.
Video games, etc. Anything that falls in that kind of genre.
You watch Big Bang Theory?
I do some, yes.
All right. There's two ways that you can get into that. Either you collected stuff as a child, or you're buying and then reselling.
Both.
Okay.
Both some. Yeah.
You mentioned Star Trek, and I did not catch what the context was. Is that, do you go to some sort of convention or something? Is that what you were mentioning?
It's more for acting.
Okay.
There's a fan film or a fan-based series called Starship Farragut, and it's based on the old Star Trek series.
Mhm.
And they built a whole movie set. They built the identical bridge. They built the identical, all of the stuff, and it happens to be down in St. Mary's, Georgia. They have a big budget, and it's like being on a real movie set. They're trying to gain experience. We were guests on that set last year for about 3 days.
Okay.
I met some professional actors there.
All right. Do you like pay a fee almost like you were going to camp or something,
You
or?
don't pay anything, you don't. It's, fan film can't make any money. They can use the name and all that stuff as long as they don't charge anyone, as long as they don't sell it. So they actually use Star Trek, Starship Farragut, based on Gene Roddenberry's actual Star Trek series.
Okay. All right. The business that you run obviously requires computers. You've told us that you actually have a guy that fixes your computers.
Yes, sir.
So do you have 2 or 3 laptops at any given time, or?
One at home and one at work. It's just me. My wife helps me with the shipping part-time. It's only a couple hours a week. So we used to do it heavily when I had the store at the mall. I had probably 2 employees and myself doing just the internet full-time. Now it's just me. And we're trying to transition, so we're transitioning out of that business. So
Into what?
Trying to pursue an acting career.
Full-time?
Yes.
Okay. Well, good luck with that.
Thank you. Yeah, can't do it here.
Yeah.
Got to go to Atlanta to do it.
All right. So, and I heard you mention that. So y'all have plans to move next year.
Probably sometime. More depends on when my mother would go to Wisconsin.
Okay. But the question that I was asking about the laptops or computers, are you naturally computer savvy, or have you got some training? Because you obviously have to know a little bit about computers to run your business.
The computers itself, eBay hasn't changed too much since it started. I don't know how, 17 years, 18 years.
Okay. It's just got a template that you sort of plug in and.
Yeah, the only thing that's changed, I used to have to host my own pictures. That was a big deal back then. You have to write your own HTML codes. I had a friend help me with that, but that's been 15, 16, 14 years ago. Now you just click it and upload. So.
Do you consider yourself tech savvy?
Actually, no, not really. not computers. I fixed televisions for a while. I did warranty work for a local business, and I guess that's tech savvy, but it's more hardware, not software.
Okay.
Just screws, really unscrewing the back of the TV and knowing which part to put in. It's more of a hardware thing, not software stuff. Really, as soon as I learn it, it changes. So I kind of I do some text messaging, I do Facebook, but that's about it. I don't really want to do it anymore.
Do you are you the kind of guy that always has to have the latest phone?
No.
No? Okay. All right. No Instagram?
No, sir.
Don't use it? Have you ever used it?
I've never used it.
Okay. You have no kids?
No children.
All right. So if that changes, you're going to want to get Instagram. But you do use Facebook, and your word was occasionally.
Yes.
So,
Probably occasionally as well, probably more sporadically, because I'll do it 2-3 nights in a row and I don't look at it for a week.
okay. You're not the guy sitting at lunch that's flipping through and liking stuff
I
and
don't
checking it
think
every.
I've ever turned it on my phone.
You don't have the app on your phone.
I have it on my phone, but I don't think I've ever turned it on. I know it tracks you, and I don't like that. It tracks where you are. So I just have to disconnect
Okay.
that.
Okay. I think that's it. Okay. And The Good Wife is a good show. And you know, that is it is exactly like that in the real practice of law.
All right. Now to the back row, juror number 19. You are also in education.
Yes.
Okay. You've chosen a different age bracket, though. Have you always taught middle school?
No, sir. I've gone back to middle school. I teach at a private Christian school here in Brunswick, and 2 years prior to this, I was an assistant to a teacher in kindergarten.
Okay.
And then, but prior to that, I was teaching back at the same private school in Brunswick, in middle school.
By chance, do you know?
I did.
Okay, so you two know each other.
Yes.
Did you work at the same school?
We did.
Okay, all right. I'll go ahead and ask you this. Is there anything about that relationship? How long did you work with each other?
2 years. She was the glue that kept us together.
So say for happenstance, if you both were selected for the same jury, that would be an uncommon thing to have happen, is that you now have two individuals that are on the same jury that have known each other prior to coming to jury service. Is there anything about knowing this other juror here that would impact your ability to be a fair juror?
I was happy to see her. I don't know if that means anything.
Okay, very good. Judge, would you mind if I ask that question, or can I follow up on individual? Because I didn't know that at the time that we were talking to you. The same question, is there anything about your knowing juror number 19 that would impact your ability to be a fair juror if you were both happen to be seated on the same jury?
No, it would not.
Then thank you, ma'am. So juror 19, not to divide my attention, but now that sorted that out a little bit, how long did you work with each other?
2 years.
2 years. And then tell me a little bit about your background prior to that. Have you always been in education?
Yes, sir. I started out in education also in kindergarten in the early 90s. But then I was going back and forth while I was at in Middle Georgia and in elementary school. They took me and I was teaching a computer class there. And then I went back to school to further my education, but then I wound up having my son and stayed home for several years, but then got back into education again. And then when we moved down here, down this way, my son is a special needs child.
I see.
He has CAP, which is central audio processing disorder, and we were finding a private school with smaller grouping, small setting, and then I liked the school so much, and they told me since I was there so much, if I would go ahead and teach. But my husband was in a car accident, and working in a private school, you don't have insurance, and so that's why I moved over to the public elementary school.
I got you. So you're spending so much time as a former educator in school because of your son's unfortunate circumstances that transitioned into a job for you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then the only difference between the private school and the public school, benefits became important to you because of your husband's situation.
Yes, yes.
Is your husband okay?
Yes, sir.
And I have down that he's a general contractor. Is it construction type work?
Yes, sir.
Does he do commercial, residential?
Both.
Both. And was this a work-related situation that he
No,
was?
sir, he was just at a traffic light and he was hit from behind.
I see. But nothing permanent for
Well,
him?
he says it's permanent.
Oh, I see.
He's in construction, but
I got you.
he's able to work.
All right. There was a question about having any prior management experience, and I think you indicated affirmatively that you have prior management.
Yes, sir. While I was working in the public school, someone had asked me if I would consider running as a second job a daycare. It's a preschool for a church on St. Simon's Island, and they asked me if I would go ahead and be the coordinator for that department.
How'd you enjoy that?
Very much.
Okay. And
But
how?
I can hire, I cannot fire.
Oh, I see.
So,
One's definitely easier to
one's
do.
definitely easier than the other.
How long did you do that?
For approximately about 9 months.
And what is it that prompted you to move on to a different kind of direction?
When they called me from my private school and asked if I would consider coming back, how much I put into the private school, I couldn't do both jobs. I couldn't do 2 jobs at that point.
That makes sense. And you don't have to worry about firing as much either when you go back. Okay. You know somebody in the military.
Yes, sir. My grandfather was in the Army. My cousin was in the Marines, and my nephew through marriage is in the Air Force.
Are they all local?
My grandfather is deceased, and they are upper. My cousin is in upper New York, in upstate New York, and my nephew would be in Arizona.
Okay. Are you originally from here?
No,
Okay. Where are you a transplant from?
from New York.
New York. What part of New York?
New York City.
And how long did you live up there?
Till I was about 21.
What brought you down here?
My husband and his family lived here.
I see. So they already had a connection to
Yes, sir.
the Glenn County area, and obviously good.
Well,
good
it was Middle Georgia, and then we moved down to Glen.
medical training. Somebody in the medical field. I think you indicated you know somebody that would qualify in that category.
No, sir, I don't remember.
Okay. It was a question. Is there anyone here who's got any prior medical training, or do you know somebody that works in the medical
I know
field?
people who work in the hospital as far as occupational therapists that may have been it, but other than that,
Fair enough. And what about knowing somebody that's got any psychology background?
my stepdaughter, who was just last year, who graduated from Chicago with her doctorate in psychology, she is now a psychologist in New York on Long Island for a cancer ward.
So she's actually taken her degree and using it. She's actually a practicing psychologist. All right. Again, don't want to make assumptions, but one of the questions that we had was about Department of Family and Children's Services, DFACS, and having any interaction with them. Can you tell me about that? Is that work related, or is that something
It
else?
was both. It was myself against my mother and my stepfather, and it was also work related. I was coming back from a wedding, and I had a student, my students from private school, their parents as well as the students, they have my cell phone number, and the child happened to call me during an attack by one of his family members. So
Oh, wow.
I was on the phone hearing the entire thing.
All right. So it's a domestic situation. He reached out to you as his teacher,
Yes.
and then did you assume call 911 or instruct him to do that?
Yes, I was doing several things from the back of the car, and we tried to get the local police to go there, but the address that was listed for him was a different parent, different grandparent, and they were going back and forth, so at the wrong place. But they reached out after realizing that he had used his cell phone to call me. They tried calling to see who he contacted during the time, and showed up at the school looking because they wanted to minimize the situation.
I see.
So,
So you had an interaction with DFACS because the student reached out to you. All right, and then was it you? That wasn't you in administration. That was you directly with defects because you're almost like a fact
I
witness.
guess we went to court for him.
Okay. And then tell me about, if you can, and again, I know there's at least a couple of questions we're going to have to do in an individual setting, but if you don't mind sharing your personal situation, or we can talk about it later,
That's fine.
can you tell me about that?
As far as the student is concerned?
No,
Or myself?
yourself.
Myself, I was taken out of the home because of my parents.
Okay.
And they were the ones that would also be connected to that investigation. When they asked about being investigated, they were the ones that were investigated.
I understand.
It's a situation.
I think if it's okay with you, I'm going to follow up with that in a different capacity.
Sure.
So I'll move on to some of the other topics I need to cover, and I may come back to that with you if that's okay. I know at least one of the responses to the licensing, you're obviously a certified teacher, correct?
I'm certified through the Association of Christian Schools.
Okay.
I'm very close as far as the public, but I'm certified through the private schools.
Any other license that you hold?
No, sir.
What about church?
I returned because of my job as the coordinator from a different school, from a different church. I go to the Word of Life Lutheran Church on St. Simon's Island.
I'm surprised to see how many churches there are on such a small island like that, but there are quite a few that are there. The next series of questions that we asked about dealt with social media and messaging and things like that, and I know that you indicated that you do message in some capacity.
Yes, sir. It's actually an embarrassing part because the only thing that I do is Snapchat, and my son would not come downstairs for dinner, so I joined Snapchat and sent him Snapchat and told him to come down for dinner.
Whatever you got to do to get him to the table, huh?
But then he got me back and sent it to all my students. So
I'm going to tuck that away. That's actually a very interesting thought. I'll remember that. Okay. Text messaging, Facebook.
that's what I do.
Okay.
Facebook, I have an account only to be connected because in Gillette County you have a yard sale, and in order to be connected to the Glen County yard sale to sell things, you have a Facebook, and my son just set it up, and I don't even know about it.
I see. So you did that just so you could participate.
Participate, yes, sir.
Is this a countywide?
Yes, it is, actually.
Really? I'm not. I have to look into it. Everybody's nodding their head, so we're, like the judge said, we're all learning about things. We have a neighborhood garage sale in my neighborhood, but I'm not a countywide one, so it's interesting. And then Craigslist as well. Is that?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me about that?
Buying and selling. It's basically been my husband, but I watch him, and if anything, because he's a contractor, so he'll look for tools, or we might have furniture or things that we're either selling or anything.
Okay. Letter to editor or online post. I think that you indicated you've
Yes,
done
sir.
that in the past.
We've had, because of my son having special needs, I
Mhm.
had gone to, when we first came down from Middle Georgia, to several private schools in the area, and because his special needs were basically just needing to be sitting up front and being redirected, a lot of the schools wouldn't accept him, but then the school that I go to said, yes, we'll take him, and I wrote a letter to the editor thanking them to having people that would be willing to help him.
Okay, great. Sometimes we open up the editorial section, you see negativity, some criticisms of whatever may be going on, or the topic of the hour. You wanted to actually say something positive
Yes.
about your personal.
Very positive for me.
Anything else that prompted you to raise your hand for that question, or
No, sir, just
you have some legal interests? I think you indicated.
Yes, sir. I've watched, Mr. Corning mentioned the Boston Legal.
Mhm.
Watched that. I watched the
Gotta love Denny Crane.
Yes, you have to. And so, and also The Good Wife, and I also have on Sirius XM, which I have not listened to this week, but Fox News and CNN Headline News, and there is a program that I listen to when I'm traveling, and I forget the name of it, but they go through different situations and different legal issues and things that I listen to on there.
That's a recurring.
Yes, sir. Yes, I forget what day it is, but forgive me, I cannot remember the name of it.
That's all right. It just, topics of the day.
Yeah, it's through on like different types of trials and things.
I see. I assume you've been following the judge's instructions not to pay attention to what's going
I
on.
have not done so, no, sir.
Okay. What about legal documentaries? Is that along the same lines of what we just
I would
discussed?
think so, I would think so.
Any specific ones that you followed?
No, sir.
You indicated that you're a caretaker, and I understand obviously as a career path you're somewhat a caretaker with your students,
Yes.
and also you're a caretaker for your child with special needs as well.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anything else that prompted her?
My grandmother was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I would fly back up to New York to take care of her when possible. And then during that period of time when I had my son and I was at home, I had a young girl whose parents were going through a divorce, and she had a very bad case of mono, and so she stayed with us for almost 6 months.
Oh wow. You just volunteered to
Yes, sir.
to care for her? Did you know her as a student or as a
She was a friend's daughter.
I see. Volunteering with kids. Tell me a little bit about that.
Anywhere you can get a chance to.
Okay.
There are gifts. So.
You've had a positive experience with law enforcement that prompted you to raise your hand.
Yes, sir. We had, when we moved from one home to the other, we had a moving company do so, and I did not realize it, and there was we were called to tell us that there was a police officer on his way over to our home, and he came to tell us that one of the movers who had gotten into an argument with his girlfriend, she told him that he had stole quite a bit from us, and we were not aware of it.
Really?
And so he asked me, the first part of it was, do you wish to press charges? Well, in the beginning, it was just about some jewelry that I had, and I said no, because if he needed it that badly, he was welcome, and that was fine. But then it turns out that he stole quite a large collection of baseball cards from my husband, and then there was no asking anymore, and he was very kind.
Okay. So you had a proactive police officer that reached out to you to let you know that a crime had been committed that you were unaware of.
Unaware of,
Is
yes.
that, and that local?
Yes, sir.
The case, did it actually go to court? Do you know what the net results were?
Yes, sir. He sends us a check through his probation officer.
I see. So you're actually getting paid restitution
Yes,
as a part of that. Was that something recent?
No, sir. It's probably about 2014.
Okay. There was a question about, you were one of the few jurors that raised their hand about court-martial, knowing somebody involved in a court-martial. Did I get that correct?
Yes, sir. We've had an incident that's actually ongoing right now, and he was a student, and we just learned about it.
Oh, I see. Okay, so a student who's now, I assume, left your...
Right. He's graduated, and he's moved on. The prior time when I told you I was at the private school, he was there then, and he was a student then, and now he's already graduated, and he has joined the service, and he's been court-martialed.
Do you know what for?
Pending, I think from being with a minor.
Okay. Have you been involved with that situation at all, or you're just aware of
I
it?
received a note from his mom asking for, if it would be possible to pass around, to possible do a character
Mhm.
letter for him, but that's still in the process of just receiving it.
Okay. And are you going to do that, or have you...
We have to, yes, because when I had him, at that time, yes.
Okay.
There was quite a bit of, of character that I could be writing about to them, so yes.
All right. And how long ago was he a student in your care?
He was a student back in 2000 when I was a long-term sub in the very beginning before I actually started working. So it was probably about 2007 when we first started.
All right, 9 or 10 years ago then. You've already talked about giving one statement to law enforcement involving, I'm going to call it a theft.
Yes.
Maybe it could even qualify as a burglary. It's neither here nor there. Is that what you were referring to when you raised your hand for that?
Yes, sir.
And then making an allegation of abuse or neglect.
I didn't do it through the police. I had done it through DFAS came to the home to question me.
Is this related to the situation where the student called you, or is this a different situation?
Well, personally, DFAX was for myself, but then also through DFAX I had called them.
Yes.
And I spoke with them, and then also went down to be there during the court case to be there for him.
Yeah.
And then also during the time my principal had said the other students, not knowing of that situation, have come to me since, and I've had to, because of that connection with that original case,
Mhm.
I have a card that if anything comes to my attention, I call this gentleman and from DFAX, and he
So
takes care of things.
you now have got a connection there. Sometimes it can be difficult when you're dealing with a big agency, and because of that connection, you sometimes...
I'm able to call and ask him just to look into something.
I'm again going to follow up on the more personal aspects of that at a different time, but I just wanted to make sure I adequately asked you about that. That answers my next question. Transporting children, obviously your son.
Well, my son when he was little, and my oldest stepson has children. He asked me to come up and get them and to take care of them over the summer for some bit. And they are a 6-year-old boy and a 3-year-old.
3-year-old?
3-year-old.
Okay.
My grandchildren.
And when on those occasions where you transport them, 3-year-old's probably old enough for a booster.
No, they were regular car seats.
Regular car seat. Okay. How do you get it? Do you have a car seat or?
I took theirs.
You do? Okay. All right. Now I want to ask you about experience a tragic occurrence or tragic loss. There was a question the defense asked about that.
Yes, sir. It was my son's person that he had gone to high school with. He had shot himself.
Mm. Okay. And then finally, before we talk to you individually, children sleeping in car, were you referring to your son?
My grandson.
Grandson.
My
Okay.
grandson.
Sometimes fall asleep in the car.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
It is. Thank you.
All right, so right at the end there, y'all got to the big question that I had. I had written down here grandkids 6 and 3, and so these are your husband's grandchildren.
By heart, they're mine also, because
Okay.
they're his legally.
All right, that's what I thought. Okay, and they don't live with you,
No, sir, they live in Middle Georgia.
Middle Georgia.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that's where you're from.
I-
Out via New York.
Yes.
Okay. And so do y'all go up there and visit with them very often?
Yes, sir.
And they come down here?
Yes, sir.
But not enough that you have to keep your own car seat?
No, sir.
Just use theirs?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And how often would you say that you were around these grandkids, or
Once or twice a month.
that often?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And would you be in a position to need to transport them every time y'all visit?
No, sir, because I drive with them wherever they're going. So if we're together on a weekend, or I go in their car, and I'm usually a passenger, and usually they want me back there with them, squeezed between the two.
Right.
So,
Lucky you. And so, talking about kids falling asleep, some kids never go to sleep, and then some fall asleep obviously very quickly once they get in a car. And what you're telling us is that at least one of these grandkids would fall into that latter category.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is that the 3-year-old?
the 3-year-old,
Okay.
yes, sir.
All right. You have one child, and I don't think we got his age.
21 male.
Okay. And he still lives with you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. You have did I hear this correctly? You have a daughter that is a psychologist?
My stepdaughter, she's a psychologist.
All right. In New York?
Yes, sir.
And
Long Island.
Long Island? And she works in a hospital cancer ward?
She works at a branch off of the hospital for the cancer ward, cancer patients.
Okay. Not just children, just cancer patients in
Cancer
general?
patients, yes, sir.
How long has she been doing that kind of
Since
work?
she's gotten her doctorate, since probably July of 2015.
And did she grow up living in the home with you?
No, so she lived with her mom in Long Island.
Okay. All right. You mentioned there toward the end when Mr. Evans was question you about a former student in 2007. So it's been almost 10 years ago. And you were contacted by the former student's family, mother, to ask to write a character letter.
Yes, sir.
Right. Was this student, was there something unique about the relationship that they would be reaching out to you?
Yes, sir. I go beyond the classroom, so that's why a lot of students will, I learn who they are, what makes them tick, and, about their home lives and things, because it goes beyond, it's just spiritual, it's their academics, it's about them. So I knew a lot about his home life, the things that, he had gone through, and my son, I was also a heavy friend of him.
Had you stayed in contact with this student over the last 9 years or so?
I heard of him, and because of him going away, into the service, I did not, but I knew of him. I would hear about him. But the character letter was due to me having him as a student.
And so this young man's mother has contacted you and advised you that he is being court-martialed.
I heard that through a lot of people that knew him, and I had known the situation already, but I was unaware of where she had moved to, so I could not reach out to her to see if there was anything I could do, but I did receive a no because she found out that I was back at the school.
Okay.
And so she wrote the letter there.
All right, and when you say situation, you mean you'd learned he'd been arrested?
I know him.
All right.
Yes.
And did you know the circumstances of what he was charged with?
I had heard things, but I didn't know the reality of what really happened, because I heard it through different people.
Okay. But there hasn't been a trial yet or anything like that?
As far as I know, sir, no.
Okay, so when you say reality, you mean...
Of what he was charged with.
Okay, what he was charged with.
Yes, sir.
All right, and you said it had something to do with being with a minor?
Yes, sir.
All right. So you talked something like statutory rape or something of that
I'm
nature?
not sure.
Okay, just know it involved a minor?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you certainly don't know any of the facts or circumstances that have to do with whatever it is that he's charged with?
The reality, no, sir, only
Yeah.
hearsay.
Okay. But having known him 9 years ago and gotten close to him, you nonetheless feel comfortable to be able to put your name on a piece of paper and say, there's more to this young man than this
Yes, sir, because
circumstance.
when I write the letter, I'll be letting the judge know, and whoever this letter goes to, that this is a letter pertaining to me or him then.
Right.
Yes, sir.
And do you know if there are others, or have you been made aware if there are others from the school or from the community that will be doing the same thing?
I'm unsure. I know of, no one has made it known to me whether they choose to do it or not. I know several have received a letter from his mom, but I'm unaware of what their choice will be. I didn't want to pry because that's their choice and what they choose to do.
Okay. But at the end of the day, there was at least something in this person 9 years ago that you're comfortable saying that certainly at that time he was a person of good character.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. You have very, very limited use of any sort of social media technology other than the Snapchat, and frankly, that's hilarious. I've got a 15-year-old daughter who's down the hallway, and it's close enough for me just to yell, but I'm sure Snapchat would probably work equally well. You text?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is that a common way of communication?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. And you have Facebook, but you have it just for yard sales?
Yes, sir. I
Okay.
don't even know what's on there. to be
All right,
honest.
that's brilliant. All right. So I take it then you do not fall into that category of person who has to have the latest phone as soon as they come out?
I happen to have a reason why I have an iPhone today is because of the FaceTime, to FaceTime the grandchildren.
Okay. All right. The ones in Middle Georgia.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, let me double check, make sure there's nothing else need to follow up. Yeah, I think you responded that you were aware of public service announcements, not regarding children, but regarding reminders not to leave or forget animals in cars.
Correct. Just animals. I've
Okay.
never heard any.
All right, and is that something that you've heard here in the Golden Isles area?
Yes, sir.
Radio or TV?
In radio.
Okay. What station do you listen to?
Well, during a period of time when I did not have Sirius XM, we were drinking or going between cars. It was, I think it was, might have been 92.7, I'm unsure, or 88.9,
Okay.
which is NPR.
Okay. Are you a regular NPR listener?
Yes, sir, but it's not local. It goes through the Sirius now. It's
Okay.
called NPR now, I think.
You indicated that you had done research on car seats before making a purchase.
Yes, sir. Well, because it was one that we were purchasing for during a baby shower for the grandchildren.
Okay. And you were researching for what purpose?
For buying the car seat for them if we were going to be doing it. And actually someone else wound up getting it for them, but we were researching just to see which would be the best one for each of the grandchildren during the baby showers.
Okay. Best meaning best quality or best for
All
safety?
around. Everything.
Okay. You mentioned that you either knew a family or close friend or coworker who'd had an affair. Who's that? Is that somebody you can tell us about?
It was a friend who has, since we've lost touch, not because of the affair, but they had moved out of town and moved to Upper Georgia, and we've lost touch, but not because of the affair.
I like that phrase, Upper Georgia.
Upper Georgia.
What is that, everything north of
Upstate
Macon?
New York, upstate.
Okay. All right, and so was this a close friend?
At the time, but because of distance, we just lost touch.
Okay. And I'm not suggesting that you approved of whatever it was she did, but y'all nonetheless remain friends?
Yes.
Okay. And was she married at the time?
No, sir.
Just the other person was?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, it's a good time. Yes, sir. Oh, you're just getting up to go?
Until you tell me otherwise.
I'll let the jury go first. Oh, you were getting up for them. He was being courteous and I was being rude, so I apologize. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for lunch break. Let's break till 1 o'clock. Keep an open mind. Don't discuss this matter with each other. Others are ready to speak with you about the case. No contact with attorneys, parties, or witnesses to the case. And absolutely no exposure to any media coverage, internet access, anything to do with this case. Keep yourself totally removed. Have a very lovely lunch this evening.
All right, jury.
Any issues for the state before we break?
No.
for the defense.
No, ma'am.
All have a good lunch. We're in recess till 1.
Yes.